Marcus Tate strolled through Crestwood's park, Bravo's leash loose in his grip, ignoring glares from passers-by. Officer Carver blocked his path, sneering at Bravo, calling it a filthy mutt, and Marcus a thug. Marcus stayed stone-faced, but Carver yanked Bravo's collar, then froze. A medal gleamed. K9 Valor, Afghanistan. Carver's jaw dropped, his taunts choked off. Marcus stared, sensing a storm coming, as Carver stalked away, shamed but scheming. What would Carver do to bury this humiliation? Before we dive deeper, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's episode will blow your mind. Marcus Tate's boots crunched on the gravel path leading to the Crestwood Veterans Center, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the Ohio town's quiet streets. Bravo, his scarred German shepherd, padded beside him, the K9 Valor, medal on his collar glinting faintly, a silent badge of their shared past in Afghanistan's dust and chaos. Marcus's pulse still thrummed from the park encounter with Officer Dale Carver, the cop's sneer and that frozen moment when he spotted Bravo's medal replaying in his mind. Maybe, Marcus thought, catching Carver off guard would keep him at bay. Maybe this small win could mean a quieter life in Crestwood, where stares followed him like hawks. He adjusted his faded army jacket, squared his shoulders, and pushed open the center's glass door, hoping the support group would ground him. Inside, the room smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet, with folding chairs arranged in a loose circle. A dozen veterans, mostly white, older men with weathered faces, nodded as Marcus settled Bravo near his feet. The group leader, a wiry guy, named Hank with a Vietnam patch on his cap, started talking about coping with nightmares, but Marcus's mind drifted. He glanced at Bravo, whose ears twitched at every creak, and felt a flicker of pride. They'd survived roadside bombs, sniper, fire, and 2 tours together. Crestwood's glares and whispers. He could handle those, he had to. The door slammed open, cutting Hank off mid-sentence. Officer Carver stormed in, his polished boots thudding, flanked by 2 deputies with hands on their holsters. The room went still, coffee cups frozen halfway to mouths. Carver's eyes locked on Marcus, his lips curling into a smirk that didn't reach his cold blue stare. Marcus's stomach tightened, but he kept his face blank, a trick learned under fire. Bravo, growled low, hackles rising, but Marcus touched his head, signaling calm. Carver's voice boomed sharp as a whip. He pointed at Marcus, his badge catching the fluorescent light, and accused him of stealing Bravo's medal from a true hero, some honorable soldier who'd earned it in blood. The words hit like shrapnel, each one slicing deeper. Marcus opened, his mouth to protest, to explain Bravo's service, their service, but Carver cut him off, barking at the deputies to cuff him. The veterans shifted uncomfortably, some averting their eyes, others muttering under their breath. Marcus caught fragments of their whispers, slurs like knives. Thug, criminal, not one of us. His jaw clenched, but he stayed steady as the deputies yanked his arms back, the cold steel of handcuffs biting his wrists. Bravo lunged, teeth bared, but Marcus snapped a command, and the dog froze, trembling with restraint. The deputies shoved Marcus toward the door, Carver leading the way, his stride cocky like a man who'd already won. Outside, a crowd had gathered, drawn by the flashing lights of squad cars parked crookedly on the lawn. Faces peered from behind, curtains across the street, and a few locals leaned against lampposts, smirking. Marcus kept his head high, though shame burned in his chest, not for anything he'd done, but for the eyes that judged him guilty without proof. A woman in the crowd, her hair in a tight bun, hissed a word Marcus had heard too many times, one that made his fists itch to swing. He swallowed it, focusing on Bravo's steady steps beside him, the dog's loyalty a lifeline. At the station, a squat brick building with peeling paint, the deputies hauled Marcus into a holding room that reeked of bleach and stale sweat. Carver leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching as they uncuffed Marcus, but left him standing. No chair offered. The deputies filed out, leaving just Marcus, Bravo, and Carver, whose smirk had grown sharper, like he was savoring a private joke. Marcus demanded to know the charge, his voice low but firm. the same tone he'd used to rally his squad under mortar fire. Carver chuckled, saying the medal was reported stolen by a veteran's widow, and Marcus fit the profile of a thief, didn't. He? Black, scruffy, always skulking around with that mutt. Marcus's blood boiled, but he kept his cool, explaining Bravo earned the medal in Afghanistan, sniffing out bombs that saved dozens of lives. He reached for his phone to pull up discharge papers, but Carver waved it off, saying no one cared about his story. The door creaked open and a clerk, a young woman with nervous eyes, slipped in with a clipboard. She avoided Carver's gaze, muttering about bail paperwork, and pressed a folded note into Marcus's hand as she passed. Carver didn't notice, too busy scrolling his phone, probably gloating to someone. Marcus pocketed the note, his heart ticking faster. The clerk left, and Carver finally stepped back, saying Marcus was free for now, but he'd be watching. The deputies returned, escorting Marcus out, Bravo's claws clicking on the linoleum. Outside, the night air hit Marcus's face, crisp, hand-heavy with the scent of coming rain. He waited until he was a block away, under a flickering street lamp, to unfold the note. Scrawled in hasty ink, it read, "Carver's lying. Check the widow's name. You're not alone." Marcus's breath caught. Someone believed him. Someone saw through Carver's game. He scratched Bravo's ears, the dog's warmth steadying him, and felt a spark of hope. He'd dodged this bullet, hadn't he? The arrest was a fluke, a power trip. He could fight this, clear his name, maybe even make Carver pay. He started walking home, the center's lights fading behind him, unaware of the storm brewing. At the station, Carver stood in the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low growl. He wasn't talking to a deputy or a buddy. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped, someone with authority. Carver's words were clear, each one a promise. He wasn't done with Marcus Tate, not by a long shot. That black vet thought he'd humiliated him in the park, thought he could walk away. Carver's grip tightened on the phone, his knuckles white. He'd bury Marcus, medal or no medal, and make sure Crestwood never forgot who ran this town. Marcus, halfway home, felt a chill that wasn't from the wind. Bravo's ears perked, sensing something Marcus couldn't yet see. The note in his pocket felt heavier, a lifeline but also a warning. Carver's parting words at the station echoed in his skull, not a threat but a vow, one that promised worse to come. Marcus quickened his pace, the dark streets of Crestwood stretching before him, each corner hiding eyes that weren't his friends. He'd been arrested, shamed and let go, but the fight was just beginning, and he didn't know how deep Carver's claws reached. Not yet. Marcus Tate slumped on his sagging couch, the faint glow of his phone screen casting shadows across his small Crestwood rental. Bravo curled at his feet, the German shepherd steady breathing, a quiet anchor in the Ohio night. The sting of yesterday's arrest still burned, Officer Dale Carver's smirk etched in Marcus's mind like a bad scar. That note from the station clerk, though, had lit a spark. Someone saw through Carver's lies about the stolen medal, and Marcus wasn't about to let that slip away. He opened his phone, fingers steady despite the knot in his gut, and uploaded a photo of Bravo's K9 Valor Medal, its Afghanistan engraving sharp under the flash. He typed a post, short but raw, detailing their service, the park confrontation, and Carver's false charge. He hit send, the post firing into the digital void, and leaned back, exhaling. Maybe this would shift things. Maybe Crestwood would see him for who he was, not the thug Carver painted. By morning, Marcus woke to his phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. The post had exploded, shared thousands of times, comments flooding in from veterans, dog lovers, even strangers across the state. People called Carver a disgrace, demanded justice, shared stories of their own run-ins with Crestwood's finest. Marcus scrolled, his chest tightening with something he hadn't felt in years, hope. He scratched Bravo's ears, the dog's brown eyes meeting his, and muttered that things might turn around. He showered, pulled on a clean shirt, and headed to the diner on Main Street, Bravo's leash loose in his hand. The bell above the door jangled as he stepped inside, the smell of bacon and coffee thick in the air. Heads turned, but not with the usual glares. A waitress, her name tag reading Tammy, grinned and waved him to a booth. An older man in a trucker hat clapped Marcus on the shoulder, saying he'd seen the post and that Bravo was a damn hero. Others nodded, some raising coffee mugs like a salute. Marcus sat ordering pancakes, his guard lowering for the first time in months. Tammy slid his plate over, whispering that the meal was on the house, courtesy of folks who'd read his story. Marcus ate slowly, the warmth of the food and the crowd's support sinking in. He started thinking bigger. A lawsuit against Carver, maybe, for wrongful arrest. He had the Post's momentum, the clerk's note, proof of Bravo's medal. He could fight this, make Crestwood's police answer for once. He left the diner head high, Bravo trotting proudly, and called a lawyer from Dayton, a woman named Carla, who'd commented on his post offering pro bono help. She sounded sharp, promising, to file papers by week's end. Marcus hung up feeling like he'd grabbed the reins of his life again. He walked home under a grey sky, the air heavy with coming rain, unaware of the eyes watching from a pickup across the street. Night fell, and Marcus was dozing on the couch, Bravo sprawled across his legs, when a crash jolted him awake. Glass shattered somewhere in the house, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Bravo sprang up, growling, as Marcus stumbled to his feet, heart hammering. He grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the kitchen, where the back window lay in shards on the linoleum. Spray paint glistened on the walls, wet and red, spelling out slurs that made Marcus's stomach churn, words he'd heard in whispers, but never so bold. He swung the flashlight outside, catching Bravo's doghouse in the beam, flames licking its wooden frame, the fire small but vicious. Marcus sprinted out, yanking a hose from the spigot, dousing the blaze until it hissed into smoke. His hands shook, not from fear but rage, as he scanned the dark yard. No one, just the stench of paint and charred wood. He called the police, knowing it was a gamble, and waited. Bravo pressed against his leg. 2 squad cars rolled up, lights flashing, but the lead officer wasn't Carver. It was his buddy, Sergeant Polk, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a smirk that mirrored Carver's. Polk strolled through the wreckage, kicking glass with his boot, and said it was probably just kids, bored teens pulling a prank. Marcus bit back, a retort pointing to the slurs, the targeted fire. Polk shrugged, saying they'd file a report, but Crestwood had bigger problems. The other cop, younger, stayed silent, avoiding Marcus's eyes. They left without taking photos or samples, their tail lights fading into the night. Marcus stood in his ruined kitchen, the lawyer's number still in his phone, but the diner's. Warmth felt like a distant dream. He knew Carver was behind this, had to be. The timing was too perfect, right after the Post humiliated him. Marcus cleaned the glass, boarded the window, and sat by Bravo, the dog's head heavy on his knee. He replayed Polk's dismissal, the crowd's fleeting cheers, and realized Crestwood's support was paper thin. He pulled out the clerk's note, rereading it under the flashlight's glare, and wondered who else knew Carver's game. Sleep didn't come that night. Marcus kept his phone close, checking the Post's comments, now mixed with trolls spewing hate, some echoing the slurs on his walls. He deleted the worst, but they kept coming, like roaches. As dawn broke, he walked Bravo to the end of his street, needing air, and noticed a neighbor, an older woman who'd waved yesterday, now hurrying inside when she saw him. His gut twisted. Then he spotted it, a grainy security clip emailed from a stranger, showing a police cruiser idling near his house just before the vandalism. The timestamp matched. Marcus's jaw tightened, his fingers hovering over Carla's number. Carver wasn't just a rogue cop. He was wired into something bigger, something that could burn more than a doghouse. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. If you're raging at Carver's revenge or shaking your head at Crestwood's fake support, drop a number 1 in the comments. Stand with Marcus and Bravo, hit like and subscribe to follow their fight, because the next chapter's twist will leave you speechless. How deep does Carver's influence run, and what's his next move to crush Marcus's spark of hope? Marcus Tate knelt in his Crestwood backyard, the morning sun harsh on his face, as he scrubbed the last of the red spray paint from his porch. The slurs were gone, but their sting lingered, sharp as the glass he'd swept from his kitchen floor. Bravo nosed the charred remains of his doghouse, the German shepherd's ears twitching at every passing car. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Carla, the Dayton lawyer, confirming their meeting to draft a lawsuit against Officer Dale Carver for wrongful arrest. The security clip of the police cruiser, emailed by a stranger, sat in his inbox. A ticking bomb he hadn't yet shared. Marcus stood, wiping sweat from his brow, and muttered to Bravo that they'd fight this, no matter how deep Carver's claws dug. The vandalism had shaken him, but that grainy video tied Carver to the attack, and Marcus wasn't letting it go. He needed stability, something to anchor him while he built his case. A job posting for a mechanic at Sullivan's garage, a small shop on Crestwood's Edge, had caught his eye days ago. He'd worked on Humvees in Afghanistan, coaxing engines to life under gunfire, so fixing pickups would be a breeze. He leashed Bravo, pulled on a clean flannel, and headed out, the lawyer's text fueling a flicker of resolve. Sullivan's garage smelled of oil and rubber, its bay doors open to a gravel lot stacked with tires. The owner, a burly white guy, named Tom Sullivan with grease-stained hands, greeted Marcus warmly, shaking his hand like they'd known each other years. Marcus explained his experience, mentioning his army days, and Tom's eyes lit up at the mention of Bravo's medal, visible on the dog's collar as he lay by the door. Tom hired him on the spot, offering $20 an hour and a start tomorrow. Marcus felt a weight lift, the first real break since moving to this Ohio town 6 months ago. He thanked Tom, promised to be early, and walked home with Bravo. The spring air crisp, almost kind. For a moment he let himself imagine a routine, paychecks, maybe enough to fix the house, fight Carver in court, and carve out a life here. That afternoon, Marcus hammered plywood over his broken window, Bravo dozing in the grass. He replayed the diner's cheers from yesterday, the viral post exposing Carver's lies, and now this job. Small wins, but they added up. He called Carla, updating her on the cruiser video, and she urged him to keep it quiet until they could verify it. Marcus agreed, pocketing his phone, and started dinner, the smell of sizzling chicken filling the kitchen. He fed Bravo a scrap, the dog's tail, thumping, and felt like he was clawing his way back. The next morning Marcus arrived at Sullivan's garage 10 minutes early. Toolbox in hand, Bravo settled in a corner with a water bowl Tom had set out. The work was steady, swapping spark plugs, patching tires, the hum of tools drowning out Crestwood's noise. Tom chatted about his own army days, bonding over stories of desert heat and bad coffee, and Marcus let his guard slip, laughing for the first time in weeks. By noon, he'd fixed 3 cars, earning a nod from Tom, who called him a natural. Marcus was tightening a bolt when a shadow fell across the bay. He looked up to see Officer Carver leaning against a tow truck, his badge glinting, his smirk as sharp as ever. Tom stiffened, wiping his hands on a rag, and stepped forward, but Carver ignored him, eyes locked on Marcus. He said the garage had a security issue, a known criminal working the floor, and gestured at Marcus like he was dirt. Marcus's pulse spiked, but he kept his wrench steady, asking what Carver wanted. Tom cut in, saying Marcus was a good hire, but Carver's voice turned cold, mentioning complaints from customers who didn't feel safe. Tom's face fell, and Marcus saw the math in his eyes, business versus loyalty. Carver lingered, chatting, with a passing driver, his presence a poison cloud, then left without another word. Marcus worked through lunch, hoping Tom would stand firm, but by closing, Tom called him to the office. His voice was low, apologetic, saying he couldn't risk the garage's reputation, not with Carver breathing down his neck. Marcus was fired, effective immediately. Tom offered a week's pay, but Marcus waved it off, pride burning hotter than shame. He packed his tools, leashed Bravo, and walked out, the gravel crunching like gunfire under his boots. The job, the lifeline he'd grasped, was gone in a day, Carver's shadow snuffing it out. Marcus's anger churned, but he kept it caged, knowing Carver wanted him to snap. He headed to the police station, Bravo at his side, determined to confront Carver head-on. The station's fluorescent lights buzzed as Marcus stepped inside, the clerk from before glancing up nervously. Carver was at a desk, flipping through papers, and looked up with a grin that made Marcus's skin crawl. Marcus demanded to know why Carver tanked his job, his voice low but edged, the same tone he'd used to face down insurgents. Carver leaned back, admitting he'd spoken to Tom, said it was his duty to keep Crestwood safe from types like Marcus. The casual venom in his words, the way he said types, hit harder than a fist. Marcus's hand slipped to his phone, hidden in his pocket, and hit record, capturing every word. Carver kept talking, oblivious, saying Marcus should have known better than to flash that medal and expect respect. Marcus left, the recording a live wire in his hand, but his victory felt fragile. He stepped into the night, the air thick with the threat of rain, and started home, Bravo's collar jangling softly. He'd parked his old Ford truck a block away, figuring a walk would clear his head, but when he reached it, his breath caught. All 4 tires were slashed, rubber sagging into the pavement, a folded note tucked under the wiper. Marcus grabbed it, his fingers trembling, and read the scrawled words, "Leave Crestwood, boy." The slur at the end wasn't new, but its boldness, paired with the ruined tires, twisted his gut. He scanned the street, empty except for a distant street lamp's flicker, and knew Carver's hand was in this too. Marcus pocketed the note, his mind racing. The recording was gold, proof of Carver's sabotage, but the tires, the note, they screamed something uglier, a town turning on him. He walked home, Bravo's warmth against his leg, the only thing keeping him grounded. Inside, he locked the door, pulled the note out and studied it under the kitchen light. The handwriting felt familiar, nagging at his memory. He dug through a drawer, finding a memo he'd grabbed from the station during his arrest, a routine, form about bail. The script matched, the same sharp loops on the letters, linking the note to someone inside the precinct, maybe Carver himself, maybe a crony. Marcus sat back, the recording still on his phone, the cruiser video on his laptop, the note in his hand. He'd lost his job, his truck was crippled, and Crestwood's mask was off, but he wasn't done. Carver thought he'd break him, scare him out of town. Marcus scratched Bravo's head, the dog's eyes steady, and vowed to hit back harder. The lawsuit was still alive, and that recording could burn Carver to the ground. But as he stared at the note, the matched handwriting gnawed at him, whispering that Carver wasn't alone, that this fight was bigger than one cop. The night pressed against his boarded window, and Marcus felt the walls of Crestwood closing in, each step forward, met with a shove back, each spark of hope doused with a fresh cut. Marcus Tate hunched over his kitchen table, the dim bulb overhead flickering like his resolve. The note from his slashed tires, its hateful scrawl matching a police memo, lay beside his phone, where Officer Dale Carver's recorded confession, looped silently, a weapon waiting to be fired. Bravo, his German shepherd, slept fitfully by the boarded window, the K9 Valor medal on his collar, a faint glint in the Crestwood night. Marcus's rental still reeked of spray paint and ash from the vandalism 2 nights ago, a reminder of Carver's reach. The job at Sullivan's garage, gone in a day, stung worse than the trashed truck. But that recording, Carver admitting he'd sabotaged Marcus's life, was a lifeline. Marcus sipped cold coffee, his eyes burning from no sleep, and uploaded the audio to a local forum, tagging news outlets and veteran groups. He typed a caption, raw and direct, exposing Carver's lies about the medal theft and his pressure on Tom Sullivan. He hit post, the file soaring into the digital ether, and leaned back, whispering to Bravo that this could change everything. By dawn, the recording had spread like wildfire, shared across Ohio and beyond, comments exploding with outrage. Hashtags trended. Justice for Marcus, fire Carver, and news vans rolled into Crestwood, their satellite dishes sprouting like weeds. Marcus's phone buzzed with messages, strangers calling him a hero, veterans offering support, even Carla, his lawyer, saying, "This could seal the lawsuit." At noon, a breaking news alert flashed, Crestwood PD suspending Carver pending investigation. Marcus stood in his living room, Bravo's tail thumping, and felt a rush of triumph. He'd done it, exposed Carver, turned the town's eyes on him. He called a meeting with allies, a handful of locals who'd rallied behind his viral medal post, to plan a public rally outside City Hall. They'd demand accountability, push the lawsuit, maybe even get Carver's badge. Marcus ironed a shirt, fed Bravo, and walked to the community center, his step lighter than it had been in weeks. The center's meeting room was cramped, with folding tables and a buzzing fluorescent light. 5 allies showed up, Tammy from the diner, a veteran named Hank, 2 college kids who'd shared his posts, and a quiet woman named Lena, who'd lost her brother to police violence. They brainstormed signs, chants, and a speech Marcus would give, his voice steady as he laid out Carver's crimes. Tammy hugged him, saying Crestwood was waking up, and Hank slapped his back, calling Bravo the real MVP. Marcus left the meeting, the Ohio sunset painting the sky orange, and felt like he'd grabbed the reins of this fight. He pictured the rally, hundreds strong, forcing the town to listen. He slept that night, Bravo curled at his feet, dreaming of a courtroom where Carver's smirk finally cracked. The next morning, Marcus woke to a pounding on his door, so loud Bravo snarled, hackles up. He peered through the peephole, heart racing, and saw nothing but flashing red and blue lights. He opened the door a crack, and a SWAT team in riot gear stormed in, rifles raised, shouting for him to hit the floor. Marcus froze, hands up, as Bravo lunged, only stopped by Marcus's sharp command. The lead officer, face hidden behind a visor, barked that Marcus was under arrest for drug trafficking, felony weight. Marcus's mind reeled, his voice lost in the chaos as they cuffed him, the steel biting his wrists harder than last time. They dragged him through the house, flipping cushions, smashing dishes, and one cop kicked open his attic hatch, pulling down plastic bags stuffed with white powder, grinning like he'd hit gold. Marcus shouted they weren't his. He'd never touched drugs, but the cops ignored him, their radios crackling with orders. Outside, a crowd gawked, phones filming, and Marcus caught slurs hissed from the shadows. Dealer, scum, typical. A van from animal control screeched up, and two men in gloves grabbed Bravo, the dog thrashing as they caged him. Marcus begged them to stop, his voice breaking, but a cop slammed him against the squad car, silencing him. At the precinct, the same bleach-stink cell as before, Marcus sat on a concrete bench, his hands still cuffed, his mind a storm. The bags, the raid, it was too clean, too fast after the recording. He pounded the wall, knuckles stinging, as Bravo's caged barks echoed in his skull. Hours later, the cell door clanged open, and there was Carver, badge gleaming, no trace of suspension. He leaned against the bars, his smirk wider than ever, and said, Marcus should have known better than to play hero. The suspension was a stunt, a press release to calm the news, while Carver pulled strings to set this up. He'd planted the drugs, called in the raid, and made sure Bravo was locked away. Marcus lunged, cuffs yanking him back, and Carver laughed. Saying the rally was dead, Marcus's allies were running scared, and Crestwood would eat him alive. He left, his boots echoing, as Marcus sank to the floor, the weight of the frame-up crushing his chest. His phone, confiscated, held the recording, now useless in evidence lockup. Carla's number was out of reach, the rally's plans scattered. He thought of Bravo caged somewhere, and his allies, Tammy's hug, Hank's grin, all fading like smoke. The cell's cold seeped into his bones, and Marcus realized Carver had played him, used his own move to bait a trap. Hours passed. Maybe. Days, the cell's clock broken. A guard, the same nervous clerk from his first arrest, passed by, her eyes darting. She didn't speak, but Marcus caught a whisper from another guard later. A name Judge Harlan tied to Carver, pulling strings to keep this quiet. Marcus's jaw tightened, the name a new piece in the puzzle, but he was alone, locked in a system rigged to break him. The rally was supposed to be his stand, the recording his sword, but Carver had turned it all to ash, and Marcus didn't know how to climb out this time. If you're furious at Carver's dirty tricks, or feel Marcus deserves a shot to fight, drop a number 1 in the comments. Want to see Bravo and Marcus rise again? Hit like and subscribe to catch the next twist, because it's about to get wild. Can Marcus escape this trap, or is Carver's grip on Crestwood too tight to break? Marcus Tate sat on the cold floor of his Crestwood cell, the concrete biting through his jeans, his wrists raw from cuffs long since removed. The stench of bleach and despair clung to the air, but it was the silence that gnawed at him. No Bravos, steady breaths, no jangle of the German Shepherd's K9 Valor medal. Officer Dale Carver's gloating words echoed in his skull, the fake suspension, the planted drugs, Bravo caged by animal control. Marcus's recording, his one shot to expose. Carver was locked away with his phone, and his allies had scattered, spooked by the SWAT raid. His chest tightened, not just from the frame-up, but from a rumor he'd overheard from a passing guard. Bravo was slated for euthanasia, deemed aggressive after snapping at the control officers. Marcus's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms as he pictured Bravo's brown eyes. The dog who'd sniffed out bombs in Afghanistan, now betrayed by the town Marcus had fought for. He wouldn't let it happen. He couldn't. Days blurred in the cell, the only clock the shift changes, of guards. Marcus kept his head down, mapping the routine, 2 guards at night, one dozing, the other scrolling his phone. The nervous clerk from his first arrest, Sarah, passed by once, her eyes flicking to him with something like pity. Marcus caught her gaze, holding it, and she hesitated, then slipped a small key under his meal tray the next night. No note, no words. His pulse surged, the key a lifeline, but he tucked it under his sock, waiting for the right moment. The chance came during a transfer to a court hearing, a routine shuffle to keep the paperwork moving. 2 guards, one yawning, led Marcus to a van, his hands cuffed but loose, the key burning against his ankle. As they paused to open the van's door, Marcus fumbled the key, unlocking one cuff with a faint click. The yawning guard turned, but Marcus moved faster, shoving him into the other, both stumbling. He sprinted, cuffs dangling, into an alley behind the precinct, the Ohio night swallowing him. Sirens wailed within minutes, but Marcus knew Crestwood's back streets from late-night walks with Bravo. He ducked through a junkyard, heart hammering, and headed for the Animal Control Pound, a squat building on the town's edge. The Pound's chain-link gate was locked, but Marcus scaled it, tearing his jacket on barbed wire. Inside, dogs barked, a chaotic chorus, and he found Bravo in a rusted cage, muzzled, eyes wide but alive. Marcus whispered his name, the dog's tail thumping, despite the pain in his stance. Using the key, Marcus popped the cage lock, easing the muzzle off, and Bravo licked his hand, a fleeting warmth in the chaos. They slipped out a side door as a security light flared, sprinting into the woods beyond Crestwood's limits. Marcus's lungs burned, his legs heavy, but Bravo kept pace, loyal as ever. They hid in a thicket, branches scratching Marcus's face as flashlights bobbed in the distance. He caught his breath, stroking Bravo's fur, and planned their next move. Expose Carver, clear his name, but first, survive. By morning, Crestwood's airwaves crackled with lies. Marcus checked a discarded radio he'd found in the junkyard, its static voice declaring him a cop-killing fugitive, armed and dangerous though no cop was dead. Carver's voice cut through, calm but venomous, urging citizens to report sightings, offering a reward. Marcus's stomach churned, the lie bigger than he'd feared, turning neighbors into hunters. He hiked deeper into the woods, Bravo limping slightly, and found a stream to wash the grime from their faces. The radio mentioned protests sparked by his recording, but they'd fizzled under the new narrative, Marcus as a monster. He smashed the radio, the crack loud in the silent trees, and vowed to fight back, to prove the drugs were planted, to save Bravo and himself. Midday, Marcus scavenged a burner phone from an abandoned campsite, its battery half dead, but enough to check news. Posts about his crimes flooded local forums, slurs peppering every thread, nigger thug killer. He scrolled past, searching for allies, but Tammy, Hank, even Carla had gone silent, their profiles dark. His hope flickered, but he sent a message to a veteran chat group begging for help, signing it with Bravo's name to prove it was him. No reply came, and the phone screen dimmed, battery fading. Marcus pocketed it, leading Bravo to a cave. He'd spotted, its mouth hidden by vines. Inside they rested, the damp stone cool against Marcus's back. He checked Bravo's paws, raw from running, and tore his shirt to wrap them, whispering apologies for dragging him into this. The dog nuzzled him, unwavering, and Marcus clung to that loyalty, his only anchor. As night fell, the burner phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. Carver's tracking Bravo's military chip. Get it out. Marcus's blood ran cold. The chip, embedded from their army days, was a tracker, a leash he hadn't known Carver could pull. He felt Bravo's neck, finding the small lump under the skin, and cursed himself for not thinking of it. A rusty knife from the campsite was his only tool, but cutting it out here, with no light, no antiseptic, risked infection. He hesitated. Bravo's trust heavy in his gaze, then decided to move, find a safer spot, maybe a vet who'd help off the books. Marcus led Bravo out, sticking to the wood's edge, avoiding roads where squad cars prowled. Flashlights swept the trees, closer now, and he heard shouts, not just cops but locals, their voices thick with hate, chanting words that echoed the slurs on his walls. A pickup's headlights grazed the path, and Marcus dove behind a log. Bravo, silent beside him. The truck passed, but a man's voice yelled about a reward, $50,000 for Marcus, dead or alive. Marcus's throat tightened. The manhunt no longer just Carver's game, but Crestwood's, a town-turned predator. He crawled forward, Bravo's breath warm on his neck, and spotted a clearing ahead, a chance to loop back toward town, find a hideout, maybe contact Carla. The guard's whisper about Judge Harlan nagged at him, a name tied to Carver, a hint of power beyond one rogue cop. Marcus gripped the phone, its screen black now, and vowed to use that name, to dig into Carver's network, to fight smarter than he'd run. But as he moved, a dog's bark, not Bravo's, split the air, followed by a cop's radio crackle. Marcus froze, realizing the manhunt was closing in, and Crestwood's woods, once a refuge, were now a trap, every shadow hiding a hunter ready to claim Carver's prize. Marcus Tate crouched in the damp cave, the Ohio woods whispering threats beyond the vine-covered entrance. Bravo, his German shepherd, panted softly, his canine valor medal dulled by mud, his paws wrapped in Marcus's torn shirt. The burner phones, warning about Bravo's military chip, a tracker officer Dale Carver was using to hunt them, burned in Marcus's mind. The manhunt's roar, cop dogs barking, locals chanting slurs for a $50,000 bounty, pressed closer each hour. Marcus's escape from Crestwood's jail, his daring rescue of Bravo from the pound, had bought them time, but not much. The drug frame-up, the lie about him killing a cop, had turned the town into a lynch mob, and Judge Harlan's name, whispered by a guard, hinted at a conspiracy bigger than Carver. Marcus's fingers grazed the rusty knife from the abandoned campsite, his only tool to cut out Bravo's chip, but the risk of infection stopped him. He needed help, a vet, a hideout, someone to trust. The burner phone, battery nearly dead, offered one shot. Marcus typed a message to a Cleveland reporter, Aisha Brooks, who'd covered his viral recording exposing Carver's sabotage. Her articles had sparked protests, however brief, and she'd seemed legit, not like Crestwood's bought-off press. He begged for a story on the manhunt's lies, signing it with Bravo's service number, and hit send before the screen went black. Marcus tucked the phone away, led Bravo out and moved deeper into the woods, sticking to ravines to dodge flashlights. Dawn broke, grey and cold, as Marcus found a stream to clean Bravo's wounds. He checked the dog's chip site, the lump under his neck swollen, and cursed Carver's reach. Mid-morning, a faint buzz came from his pocket, the phone somehow clinging to life. A reply from Aisha, "Got your message. Story runs tonight. Stay safe." Marcus's heart leapt, a crack of light in the dark. If Aisha's story hit, it could shift the narrative, expose the cop-killing lie, maybe slow the manhunt. He pictured turning himself in, cleared with Bravo safe. He needed a plan, a place to hide until the story broke. Marcus remembered a black pastor, Reverend Ellis, who'd spoken at a veterans event months ago, his voice fierce against Crestwood's racism. Ellis's church, a small brick building 10 miles out, could be a sanctuary. Marcus trekked through the woods, Bravo limping but loyal, avoiding roads where squad cars prowled. By dusk they reached the church, its steeple a shadow against the fading sky. Marcus knocked, his knuckles raw, and Ellis opened the door, his face stern but softening at Bravo's medal. He ushered them inside, the smell of polished pews and candle wax a brief comfort. Marcus spilled everything, the arrest, the drugs, the manhunt, Aisha's story. Ellis nodded, offering a basement room with a cot and water for Bravo. He promised to keep them hidden, saying Crestwood's hate wouldn't touch his flock. Marcus collapsed on the cot, Bravo curled beside him, and slept, the pastor's vow a shield. That night, Aisha's story aired on a Cleveland station, picked up nationally. Marcus watched on a grainy TV Ellis brought down, the reporter's voice cutting through static. "Marcus Tate is no cop killer. Evidence suggests a frame-up by Crestwood PD, led by Officer Dale Carver, tied to a falsified drug bust. Protests erupted. In Cleveland, signs reading "Free Marcus, Save Bravo." Social media exploded, veterans sharing Bravo's medal photo, demanding justice. Marcus's eyes stung, not from tears, but pride. He thanked Ellis, who clapped his shoulder, saying the church would stand with him. Marcus planned to surrender once the protests grew, trusting Aisha's story to force a fair hearing. He cleaned Bravo's paws, whispering they'd make it, and felt hope, real hope, for the first time since the park. The next morning, Ellis brought breakfast, eggs and coffee, and said he'd contacted a lawyer to coordinate with Carla, Marcus's original counsel. Marcus nodded, grateful, and outlined his surrender plan, asking Ellis to watch Bravo until it was safe. The pastor agreed, his smile warm, and left to make calls. Marcus waited, pacing the basement, Bravo's breathing steady. Hours later, Ellis returned, his face tight, saying a friend had offered a safe house nearby. Marcus packed, leashing Bravo, and followed Ellis to a van parked behind the church. The drive was quiet, the pastor's hands gripping the wheel. They stopped at a rundown cabin, its windows dark, and Ellis led them inside. Marcus stepped through the door, Bravo at his heels, and froze. 3 men in ski masks waited, bats in hand, Carver's smirk gleaming from the corner. Ellis backed away, muttering apologies, a wad of cash peeking from his pocket. Marcus's blood roared, betrayal cutting deeper than any cuff. He dove for Bravo, but a bat swung, clipping his shoulder. Bravo lunged, snarling, only to yelp as a masked man shot his leg, blood blooming on his fur. Marcus roared, tackling the shooter, but another bat cracked his ribs, and he hit the floor. Carver stepped forward, kicking Marcus's side, saying he'd paid Ellis to deliver. Easy money for a preacher. Marcus crawled to Bravo, the dog whimpering, and glared at Carver, who laughed, ordering his men to tie them up. Marcus broke free, shoving past Ellis, and scooped Bravo, sprinting into the woods as gunfire cracked behind him. Branches tore his skin, but he ran, Bravo's weight heavy in his arms, until he collapsed in a ditch, the church's steeple a distant betrayal. Marcus checked Bravo's wound, shallow but bleeding, and tore his sleeve to bind it, his hands shaking with rage. He found a receipt in his pocket, dropped by Ellis, stamped with a Crestwood councilman's name, Vernon Reed, linked to Carver's. Cash. Marcus's jaw clenched. The pastor's sell out a new piece in the puzzle, Reed a bigger player than he'd guessed. He hid Bravo in a hollow log, whispering he'd be back, and scouted the area, knowing Carver's men were close. Taisha's story had lit a fire, but Ellis's knife in his back doused it, leaving Marcus and Bravo alone, hunted with Crestwood's hate closing in. If you're gutted by Ellis's betrayal or cheering Marcus's grit to save Bravo, drop number 1 in the comments. Believe this fight's worth following? Hit like and subscribe to catch the next chapter, because it's about to get insane. Who's this councilman Vernon Reed, and how will Marcus strike back with Bravo bleeding? And nowhere to run. Marcus Tate crouched in a ditch, the Ohio night thick with the chirp of crickets and the distant bark of hunt dogs. Bravo, his German shepherd, whimpered softly, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage on his leg, the canine valor medal on his collar caked with mud. Marcus's ribs ached from the bat swung by Officer Dale Carver's goons in the cabin ambush, set up by Reverend Ellis's betrayal. The receipt in his pocket, stamped with Councilman Vernon Reed's name, burned like a fuse-proof Carver's racist vendetta stretched beyond the precinct. Taisha Brooks's news story had sparked protests, but Crestwood's manhunt, fueled by the lie that Marcus killed a cop, had turned neighbors into bounty hunters, $50,000 on his head. Marcus stroked Bravo's head, whispering they'd make it, though the woods felt like a noose tightening. He needed a plan, a way to expose Carver and Reed, but with Bravo hurt and no allies left, hope was a thin thread. Marcus carried Bravo to an abandoned mill he'd spotted days ago, its rusted silos looming like ghosts. Inside, the air smelled of mold and machine oil, but it was dry, hidden from the flashlight sweeping the trees. He set Bravo on a pile of sacks, checking the dog's wound under a sliver of moonlight through a cracked window. The bullet had grazed, not lodged, But infection loomed without proper care. Marcus's own cut stung, his shoulder bruised purple, but he pushed the pain down, a trick learned in Afghanistan's chaos. He rummaged through the mill, finding a dusty first aid kit with gauze and antiseptic, enough to clean Bravo's leg. The dog flinched but stayed still, trusting him, and Marcus's throat tightened, guilt heavy for dragging Bravo into this. The burner phone was dead, Aisha unreachable, but Marcus had one card left, the local radio station WCRD a mile away. Its tower blinked faintly through the trees, a beacon. If he could hack the broadcast, play Carver's recorded confession. From his now lost phone he might rally Crestwood's few decent souls. He'd seen signal gear in the army, knew enough to try. Marcus waited until midnight, when the manhunt's noise faded, and slipped out, leaving Bravo with water from a leaky pipe. The station's back door was unlocked, a small-town oversight, and Marcus crept inside, the hum of equipment guiding him to a control room. He hotwired the console, his hands steady from years under pressure, and found a USB port. His phone was gone, but he'd backed the recording to a cloud drive before the raid, a paranoid habit that might save him. He logged in on the station's computer, downloaded the file, and set it to loop. Carver's voice admitting he'd tanked Marcus's job mocked his race and laughed at the medal. Marcus hit broadcast, the signal cutting into WCRD's late-night ads, and slipped out as the confession echoed across Crestwood. By dawn, Marcus was back at the mill, Bravo's breathing steadier. He tuned a scavenged transistor radio to WCRD, hearing his recording still playing, now mixed with call-ins from listeners, some outraged, others spewing hate. Social media clips showed crowds outside City Hall, chanting Marcus's name, signs reading "Justice Now." A lawyer, not Carla, but a new face named Greg Patel, tweeted an offer to represent Marcus pro bono, citing the broadcast as evidence. Marcus's chest swelled, the mill's damp walls feeling less like a tomb. He pictured walking into court, Bravo at his side, Carver's badge stripped. He cleaned Bravo's wound again, whispering they were close, and planned to meet Patel, trusting the Aib crowd's momentum. Mid-morning, Marcus ventured to the mill's roof, scanning for cop cars, and saw Crestwood's streets alive with protesters, their voices carrying faintly. He felt a spark, not just hope, but fire, and started packing to move, Bravo strong enough to walk. As he stepped outside, a jumbotron on a news van flickered to life in the town square, visible through the trees. Carver's face filled the screen, his badge gleaming, addressing a live broadcast. Marcus froze. Bravo growling low as Carver played doctored footage, Marcus swinging at cops during the SWAT raid, edited to look unprovoked. The audio was fake, slurs dubbed in Marcus's voice, calling officers pigs. Carver's voiceover called him a terrorist, a threat to Crestwood's peace, and urged citizens to act. The crowd's chants shifted, "Justice Now" becoming "Get him," bottles and rocks flying at the screen's edge. Marcus's stomach dropped, the radio's triumph crushed. The protesters, his lifeline, turned, faces twisted with the same hate he'd seen in the park. Patel's Twitter went silent, his offer deleted, and Marcus knew the lawyer had bailed, spooked by the footage. He retreated to the mill, Bravo limping beside him, as sirens wailed closer, the mob's shouts echoing through the woods. Marcus barricaded the door, his hands shaking, and checked Bravo's wound, the gauze soaked red again. The radio crackled, now airing Carver's press conference, the confession loop cut off. Marcus smashed the transistor, its pieces scattering, and sank beside Bravo, the dog's warmth his only anchor. Carver had flipped the script, turned his own words against him, and Crestwood had swallowed it whole. The mill's shadows pressed in, each creak a hunter's step, and Marcus realized he'd hit rock bottom, no phone, no allies, no way out. As he sat, a glint caught his eye, a USB drive half buried in the sacks, dropped by some kid or worker. Marcus grabbed it, plugging it into an old laptop he'd found in the mill's office. The drive held grainy footage, not his, but clear Carver planting the drug bags in Marcus's attic during the raid, his smirk unmistakable. Marcus's breath caught, a new weapon, but the mob's shouts grew louder, flashlights piercing the mill's cracks. He clutched the USB, Bravo's eyes meeting his, and knew Carver's rigged game wasn't over. But neither was his fight, not while he had proof and a pulse. Marcus Tate clutched the USB drive, its plastic edges digging into his palm, as he crouched in the abandoned Crestwood mill. The grainy footage it held, Officer Dale Carver planting drugs in his attic, was a lifeline, proof that could bury the cop who'd framed him. Bravo, his German shepherd, lay beside him, the canine valor medal on his collar dulled by blood and dirt, his leg wound seeping through fresh gauze. The mill's rusted walls creaked under the Ohio wind, flashlights from the manhunt slicing through. The night outside. Carver's doctored footage, aired live to paint Marcus as a cop-hating terrorist, had turned Crestwood's protesters into a mob, their shouts of "Get him" echoing closer. The radio hack, Marcus's broadcast of Carver's confession, had rallied hope only to be crushed by this new lie. The town's hate, now a tidal wave. Marcus's ribs throbbed from the cabin ambush, his shoulder bruised, but the USB was his counterstrike, a chance to flip the script. He powered up the mill's old laptop, its fan wheezing, and copied the footage, uploading it to a cloud drive he'd used since Afghanistan, paranoid habits paying off again. He found a public video platform, one that didn't need a login, and posted the clip anonymously, tagging every news outlet from Cleveland to New York. The caption was short: Crestwood PD plants evidence on black veteran. Watch and share. He hit send, the upload bar crawling as the mob's boots crunched outside, their slurs sharp as gunfire. Marcus whispered to Bravo, promising they'd get out, and checked the dog's wound, the gauze holding for now. The laptop pinged, the upload complete, and Marcus shut it down, hiding the USB in his boot. He needed to move, get to a safe spot to surrender once the footage spread, trusting it to force a fair hearing. The mill was compromised, flashlights now sweeping the silos. So Marcus lifted Bravo, wincing at his own pain, and slipped out a back hatch, the woods swallowing them. By morning, Marcus hid in a drainage culvert, Bravo panting beside him, as his phone, scavenged from a dumpster and barely charged, showed the footage going viral. National outlets picked it up, CNN, MSNBC, even international sites, with headlines screaming, "Crestwood cop caught framing veteran." Protests reignited, bigger now, spilling into Columbus and Dayton, signs reading "Free Marcus Tate, Justice for Bravo." Social media buzzed with veterans sharing Bravo's medal story, and a petition for Marcus's pardon hit 1 million signatures. Marcus's chest tightened, not with fear, but a flicker of victory. Carver's allies, the councilman Vernon Reed, even Judge Harlan, were named in comments, their ties to the frame-up questioned. Marcus felt the tide turning, the mob's shouts fading as news vans flooded Crestwood. He planned to surrender at a Cleveland precinct, far from Carver's reach, and contacted Aisha Brooks, the reporter, via a borrowed burner phone. She confirmed she'd meet him, promising a live escort to ensure safety. Marcus cleaned Bravos, wound with stream water, whispering they were almost free, and trekked toward a rendezvous point, an old warehouse 10 miles out, reachable by dusk. The warehouse loomed, its windows shattered, its brick walls tagged with faded graffiti. Marcus slipped inside, Bravo limping but alert, and checked the burner for Aisha's ETA, 30 minutes. He paced, the USB safe in his boot, and pictured Carver's face when the feds came knocking. The footage was ironclad, the protests unstoppable. He'd won, hadn't he? The thought felt fragile, but Marcus clung to it, stroking Bravo's ears, the dog's warmth a steady anchor. A low rumble broke his thoughts, not a car, but heavier, like a tank. Headlights pierced the warehouse's gaps, and Marcus dove behind. A crate, Bravo growling low. Men in tactical gear, not cops but a militia, fanned out, their patches marked with a crescent logo, the same he'd seen on a goon at the cabin. A Molotov cocktail sailed through a window, exploding in a roar of flame, the heat singeing Marcus's face. He grabbed Bravo, sprinting for a side exit as more bottles crashed, fire licking the walls. The militia shouted slurs, their voices thick with glee, hunting for sport. Marcus burst outside, flames at his back, and ducked into a storm drain, Bravo's weight dragging him down. They crawled through muck, the warehouse a glowing inferno above, and emerged in a ditch coughing smoke. Marcus checked Bravo, the dog's wound reopened but not fatal, and cursed Carver's reach. The burner buzzed. A news alert. Carver had leaked Marcus's location, claiming he was armed and dangerous, urging federal involvement. Marcus's victory, the viral footage, was drowned by this new lie, the militia's attack framed as his doing. He smashed the burner, its screen cracking, and carried Bravo deeper into the woods, his plan to surrender now ash. The feds were coming, not to help but to hunt, and Crestwood's hate had teeth sharper than he'd feared. As Marcus moved, a voice crackled from a militia radio dropped in the chaos. Carver's calm and cold, speaking to someone high up, a senator. Not Harlan or Reed, but a name Marcus didn't catch. The words were clear, Barry Tate. Clean this up. Marcus's blood ran cold, the conspiracy stretching beyond Crestwood, a machine he couldn't outrun. He hid Bravo in a thicket, checking the USB still in his boot, and vowed to fight, not just for himself, but for every soul Carver's network had crushed. The warehouse fire lit the sky, a beacon for the feds, and Marcus knew his next move had to be perfect, or he and Bravo were done. If you're screaming at Carver's ruthless ambush, or rooting for Marcus to turn that USB into justice, drop a number 1 in the comments. Ready to see this battle explode? Hit like and subscribe to catch the next twist, because it's about to get explosive. What's this senator's role, and can Marcus outsmart a conspiracy that's gone national? Marcus Tate huddled in a thicket, the Ohio woods cloaked in pre-dawn mist, his breath visible in the chill. Bravo, his German shepherd, pressed against him, the K9 Valor medal on his collar dulled by blood and soot, his leg wound seeping despite fresh bandages torn from Marcus's jacket. The USB drive in Marcus's boot, holding footage of Officer Dale Carver planting drugs, was his last weapon. But the warehouse fire set by Carver's militia still glowed on the horizon, a beacon for the feds now hunting him. Carver's leaked lie, branding Marcus armed and dangerous, had turned his viral victory, the footage exposing the frame-up, into a death sentence. The radio snatch from the militia, Carver's voice mentioning a senator, confirmed a conspiracy. Stretching beyond Crestwood, beyond Councilman Vernon Reed and Judge Harlan, Marcus's ribs screamed from the cabin, beating, his shoulder a knot of pain, but Bravo's soft whimpers cut deeper. He needed a vet, food, a way out, but Crestwood's hate had choked every path. Marcus's thoughts turned to his sister Lena in Cleveland, 60 miles north. She'd posted support after his first arrest, her voice fierce on social media, but he'd told her to stay clear, fearing Carver's reach. Now, with the feds closing in, Lena was his only shot, a safe house to regroup, maybe get Bravo patched up. Marcus scavenged a map from a trashed campsite, plotting a route through backroads, avoiding highways crawling with cops. He carried Bravo, the dog's weight heavy but grounding, and moved north, sticking to ditches under moonlight. By midday, Marcus reached a payphone outside a gas station, its neon flickering. He called Lena, his voice low, and she answered, panic in her tone, but no hesitation. She gave him her address, a small house in Cleveland's east side, and promised to wait. Marcus hung up, stealing a bottle of water and a protein bar from the station's dumpster for Bravo, and kept moving, the USB a constant weight in his boot. 2 days later, Marcus staggered into Cleveland, Bravo limping badly, both filthy and starved. Lena's street was quiet, her house a modest bungalow with peeling paint. Marcus knocked, and she pulled him inside, her eyes wide at Bravo's state. The living room smelled of coffee and lavender, a stark contrast to the wood's rot. Marcus collapsed on her couch, explaining the manhunt, the footage, the senator's shadow. Lena hugged him, tears falling, and said she'd called a vet friend, off the books, to treat Bravo. Marcus fed Bravo scraps of chicken, the dog's tail thumping weakly, and felt a flicker of relief. Lena locked the doors, drew the curtains, and promised to hide them until the vet arrived. Marcus showered, the hot water stinging his cuts, and checked Lena's laptop, the USB footage still trending but drowned by Carver's terrorist narrative. Protests had spread, but so had counter-rallies. Crestwood locals waving signs calling Marcus a thug, slurs scrawled in bold. He closed the laptop, telling Lena they'd leave once Bravo was patched, maybe head to Canada, start over. The vet, Came a quiet woman who stitched Bravo's leg and left antibiotics, no questions asked. Marcus thanked Lena, feeling he'd saved her from Crestwood's poison, and slept. Bravo curled beside him, the first rest in days. He dreamed of the park, Carver's smirk, Bravo's medal gleaming, a life before this nightmare. A crash woke, him glass shattering downstairs. Marcus bolted upright, Bravo growling as Lena screamed. He grabbed a kitchen knife and crept to the stairs, heart pounding. Lena's living room was trashed, furniture flipped, slurs carved into the walls with a blade, "Nigger, traitor, die." 3 men in hoods, not militia but locals, their accents pure Crestwood, stood over Lena, one holding her arm, another waving. A crowbar. Marcus lunged, slashing the crowbar man's hand, but a third cracked his skull with a pipe, stars exploding in his vision. Lena kicked free, grabbing a lamp to swing, but the men retreated, laughing, as a car screeched outside. Marcus stumbled to Lena, blood trickling down his temple, and saw her shaking, unharmed but terrified. He checked the house, finding a note nailed to the door. "Leave or she's next, boy." The slurs matched his Crestwood vandalism. Carver's signature clear. Marcus's relief shattered. Lena's safety a lie he'd told himself. He apologized, voice breaking, but Lena hugged him, saying she'd fight too. They packed, planning to relocate her to a friend's in Pittsburgh, but Marcus's phone, left on, buzzed with a breaking alert. Carver had tracked them, likely via Bravo's chip, and issued a new warrant. Kidnapping added to Marcus's charges, claiming he'd taken Lena hostage. Marcus's gut twisted, the setup flawless. He grabbed Lena's car keys, loaded Bravo, and drove her to a bus station, buying a ticket with cash she'd hidden. As she boarded, tears in her eyes, Marcus promised to end this. He drove back to Cleveland's outskirts, Bravo whining, and stopped at a motel, its neon sign half dead. He checked Bravo's chip, the lump hot under his skin, but cutting it out was still too risky. As Marcus settled in the motel, a text came from a blocked number. One of Carver's goons dropped during the house attack. "You're done, Tate. Surrender or we take her." Marcus froze, the message linking to a live feed. Lena's bus stopped by state troopers, her hands cuffed, Carver's voice barking orders. Marcus smashed the phone, his scream muffled by the motel's thin walls, and found another text on the goons' device, a string of orders from Vernon Reed to a national hate group, their logo the crescent from the militia. Marcus clutched the USB, Bravo's warmth his only anchor, and realized Carver's network wasn't just Crestwood. It was a machine, and Lena was its latest prey, his every move a step deeper into their trap. Marcus Tate hunched in a Cleveland motel room, the air stale with cigarette smoke and desperation, the neon sign outside buzzing like a dying fly. Bravo, his German shepherd, lay on the sagging bed, the K9 Valor Medal on his collar glinting faintly. His leg wound crusting under fresh bandages. The USB drive in Marcus's boot, holding footage of Officer Dale Carver planting drugs, was his last card. But the goon's phone, snatched during the attack on his sister Lena's house, had revealed a deeper rot, texts linking Councilman Vernon Reed to a national hate group with the crescent logo of the warehouse militia. Lena's arrest, framed as Marcus's kidnapping on a live feed orchestrated by Carver, burned in his gut, her terrified face replaying in his mind. The motel's cracked mirror showed his own, bruised and hollow, his temples scabbed from the pipe hit, ribs aching from every breath. Bravo's military chip still embedded was a ticking bomb, likely how Carver had tracked them to Cleveland. Marcus needed to act, expose Reed, save Lena, clear his name, but the feds, state troopers, and Crestwood's mob were closing in, $50,000 on his head, the lie of him as a cop-killing terrorist now national news. Marcus powered. Up the goon's phone, its battery low, and scrolled the texts. Reed ordering hits, rallies, even the warehouse fire, all tied to a hate group called Crescent Dawn. One message mentioned a senator, not by name but by code, the Capitol voice, pulling strings to bury Marcus's evidence. Marcus's jaw tightened. The conspiracy a hydra, Carver just one head. He copied the texts to the USB, his hands steady despite the pain, and planned his next move, leak everything to the FBI, not local feds who might be bought, but the D.C. office, far from Crestwood's poison. Marcus slipped out at dawn, Bravo, limping beside him, and hitched a ride to a library 20 miles away. Its computers public and untraceable. He uploaded the texts and drug footage to an FBI tip line, attaching Aisha Brooks's articles for context, and sent copies to every major news outlet, signing it, Marcus Tate, framed veteran, with Bravo's service number for proof. He wiped the computer, ditched the goon's phone in a dumpster and returned to the motel, Bravo's warmth grounding him. By noon, the leak hit, CNN breaking news, Crestwood councilman linked to hate group, veterans' evidence sparks FBI raids. Reed's office was stormed, his files seized, and Judge Harlan's name surfaced, his rulings tied to Crescent Dawn's cash. Protests swelled, now global, with London and Toronto joining, chanting Free Marcus and Lena. Marcus watched on the motel's grainy TV, his chest tight with something like triumph. He thought he'd won, the FBI's move a checkmate, Lena's release imminent. He cleaned Bravo's wound, whispering they'd see her soon, and planned to surrender in Cleveland, trusting the raids to force justice. But as night fell, the motel's power flickered, and a new alert flashed. Carver had hacked Bravo's chip, broadcasting Marcus's location to every cop in Ohio. Sirens screamed outside, helicopters thumping, their spotlights slicing the dark. Marcus grabbed Bravo, diving under the bed as tires screeched, boots pounding the parking lot. A megaphone blared, "Tate, come out, you're surrounded." The voice not Carver's, but a state trooper's, cold and final. Marcus's pulse raced, the USB still in his boot, but surrender now meant death, not trial. He crawled to a window, spotting drones buzzing overhead, their cameras glinting like eyes. Bravo growled, sensing the trap, and Marcus cursed the chip, too risky to cut out here. He smashed a side window, slipping into an alley with Bravo, the dog's limp worsening. The chase was relentless, copters sweeping, K9 units barking, their handlers shouting slurs, nigger, traitor echoing Crestwood streets. Marcus zigzagged through backyards, dodging floodlights, and hid in a church's shadow, its stained glass dark. He caught his breath, Bravo panting, and checked the news. On a stolen phone, the FBI raids real but slow, Reed still free, Harlan untouched. Carver's hack had outpaced the leak, turning Marcus's victory to dust. As he planned to move, a fire erupted behind the church, flames licking the steeple, screams rising. Marcus peered out, seeing Carver's silhouette, tossing a Molotov, his badge catching the glow. News vans caught it live, but the ticker blamed Marcus. Crestwood veteran burns church, terrorist act confirmed. Marcus's stomach dropped, the frame-up perfect, Carver painting him as the devil to Crestwood's faithful. He grabbed Bravo, sprinting from the blaze, smoke choking his lungs as sirens closed in. They dove into a sewer grate, the stench overwhelming, and crawled until the noise faded. Marcus emerged in a ditch, Bravo trembling, and checked the USB, still safe. The church fire was Carver's desperate swing, but it worked. The world now saw Marcus as a monster. He leaned against Bravo, the dog's warmth his only tether, and overheard a dying cop in the chaos, pinned by debris, gasping to another, Senator Whitlock's orders, bury the evidence, keep Carver clean. Marcus froze, the name Whitlock, the E. Capital voice, the conspiracy's head finally clear. He memorized it, vowing one last stand, not just for Lena but for every soul this machine had crushed. The sewer's dark stretched before him, the USB his only light, but Carver's fire had lit a fuse, and Marcus knew the next move had to break the game or burn him alive. Marcus Tate crawled through the Cleveland sewer, the stench of rot and rust clogging his lungs, Bravo's labored breaths echoing beside him. The German shepherd's K9 Valor Medal scraped the pipe's grime, his leg wound oozing despite the bandages torn from Marcus's dwindling clothes. The USB drive in Marcus's boot, holding footage of Officer Dale Carver planting drugs and texts tying Councilman Vernon Reed to the Crescent Dawn hate group, was his final weapon. But Senator Whitlock's name, overheard from a dying cop, loomed larger. The conspiracy's puppet master. The church fire, pinned on Marcus as a terrorist act, had tightened the noose. Helicopters thumping above, drones buzzing, Ohio's entire law enforcement hunting him for a $50,000 bounty. Lena, his sister, was cuffed in a trooper's van, framed as his hostage, her safety a knife in Marcus's gut. His ribs screamed from past beatings, his temples scabbed, but Bravo's pain cut deeper, the dog's military chip still broadcasting their location to Carver's network. Marcus emerged from the sewer into a storm drain, rain pelting his face, and carried Bravo to a library 3 miles away, its back door ajar, a haven in the chaos. The library's computers glowed in the dark, public and untraceable, and Marcus powered one up, his hands trembling but precise, army training kicking in. He plugged in the USB, uploading the drug footage, Reed's texts, and a new message naming Whitlock, linking him to Crescent Dawn's cache and Carver's frame-ups. He streamed it live on a global platform, no login, no filter, tagging Aisha Brooks, CNN, even international outlets like the BBC. The feed went live, Marcus's face on screen, bruised but defiant, recounting the park, the arrests, the militia, the church, his voice raw but steady. He held up Bravo's medal, proof of their service, and begged the world to see Crestwood's truth. The stream surged, millions watching, comments flooding. Free Marcus, save Lena, end Crescent Dawn. Marcus leaned back, Bravo's head on his knee, and felt a spark, not just hope, but power. The world finally listening. He planned to hold the library until Aisha arrived, her texts promising a news crew to escort him safely to the feds. The stream's numbers climbed, 10 million, 15 protests flaring in DC, London, Tokyo. Marcus cleaned Bravo's wound with a stolen first aid kit, whispering they'd see Lena soon. The library's quiet, a fragile shield. An hour in, the lights flickered, and a crash shook the building, glass shattering at the front. Marcus dove behind a shelf, Bravo growling as Boots stormed in, Carver's voice barking orders. He'd found them, likely via Bravo's chip, and brought a SWAT team, their lasers dancing on the walls. Marcus's heart sank, the stream still live, but his victory slipping. Carver shouted through a megaphone, "Tate, delete the stream, or she dies," and Marcus peered out, seeing Lena dragged in, hands cuffed, a gun to her temple. Her eyes met his, terrified but fierce, urging him to fight. Marcus's mind raced, the USB in his boot, the stream his only leverage. He crawled to a side room, Bravo limping, and barricaded the door, the library's fire alarm blaring from the chaos. Carver's men pounded the door, Lena's muffled cries cutting through, and Marcus knew surrender meant death for them all. He grabbed a chair, smashing a window, but a SWAT sniper's laser pinned him, forcing him back. Marcus turned to the computer, the stream at 20 million, and typed a final message. "Whitlock runs Crescent Dawn, save Lena." He looped the footage, ensuring it had run even if he fell, and faced the door, knife in hand, Bravo snarling. The door buckled and Marcus charged, tackling the first cop, his blade grazing armor. Carver shoved through, gun raised, but Marcus twisted, disarming him, the pistol skidding across the floor. Lena broke free, kicking a cop, and ran to Marcus, her cuffs loose from the struggle. They dove behind a desk, Bravo lunging at another officer, but a sniper's shot rang out, grazing Marcus's arm, blood soaking his sleeve. He staggered, vision blurring, but kept the stream live, his fingers on the keyboard, the world watching. Carver's empire crack. SWAT stormed in, cuffs snapping on Carver, not Marcus, the stream's pressure forcing their hand. Marcus collapsed, Bravo beside him, Lena's arms around them, as feds swarmed, shouting orders. The sniper's scope glinted outside, a shadow moving fast, and Marcus caught a crescent patch, Whitlock's reach not yet broken. He gripped the USB, blood pooling, and whispered to Lena they weren't done. Carver's arrest a step, not the end, the senator's shadow still hunting them. Marcus Tate woke to the sterile hum of a hospital room, the air sharp with antiseptic, his arm throbbing under a tight bandage where the sniper's bullet had grazed him. Bravo, his German shepherd, lay curled on a blanket by the bed, the K9. Valor medal on his collar polished clean, his leg wound stitched and wrapped, brown eyes watching Marcus with unwavering trust. The Cleveland Library showdown, streamed to 20 million, had forced the feds to cuff Officer Dale Carver, his smirk finally gone, but the glint of a crescent patch on the sniper's gear haunted Marcus, a sign, Senator Whitlock's Crescent. Dawn Hate Group was still alive. Lena, his sister, sat beside him, her hands uncuffed but her face etched with the terror of being Carver's hostage, her arrest as Marcus's victim, a lie now crumbling. The USB drive, safe in a hospital lockbox, held the drug-planting footage, Vernon Reed's texts, and Marcus's plea naming Whitlock, evidence that had sparked FBI raids and global protests. News played on a muted TV, CNN ticker scrolling, Crestwood. Carp jailed, councilman indicted, Senator Whitlock under investigation. Marcus exhaled, the weight of months, the park, the arrests, the manhunt, the fire easing slightly. He'd done it, hadn't he? Exposed Carver, freed Lena, saved Bravo. Crestwood's racist machine was cracking, and he was alive, a hero too. Millions. But his gut twisted. Whitlock's shadow too large, the sniper's escape too clean. Lena squeezed his hand, her voice soft but fierce, saying they'd won, that Carver was done, Reed was sweating in a cell, and Harlan's judgeship was toast. She'd been released hours ago. The kidnapping charge dropped after the stream showed her fighting beside Marcus, not against him. Bravo nuzzled her, his tail thumping, and Marcus managed a smile, his first in weeks, though pain flared with every breath, his ribs bruised, temple scabbed. A doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, checked his chart, saying he'd be out in days, the graze shallow, his vitals strong. She patted Bravo, calling him a champ, and left, promising a vet's visit for the dog's leg. Marcus leaned back, the hospital bed creaking, and flicked the TV's sound on. Aisha Brooks, the Cleveland reporter, stood outside Crestwood's precinct, her voice sharp. FBI raids have dismantled a hate network tied to Crescent Dawn, with Officer Dale Carver in custody and Councilman Vernon Reed facing charges. Senator Whitlock denies involvement, but sources confirm his office is under scrutiny. Protests continue, demanding justice for Marcus Tate and his dog, Bravo. Marcus's chest swelled, the world's eyes on Crestwood, his fight no longer alone. He pictured leaving Ohio, maybe with Lena, starting fresh somewhere quiet. Bravo at his side, the USB's truth, his shield. A nurse entered, her scrubs crisp, and adjusted his IV, her movements quick but gentle. She glanced at the TV, muttering about justice, and slipped a folded note under his pillow before leaving, her eyes darting to the door. Marcus waited until she was gone, then unfolded it, his pulse quickening. Scrawled in black ink, it read, "Whitlock's free. Crescent Dawn's alive. Watch your back." The paper trembled in his hand, the hospital's hum now a drone of threat. Lena frowned, asking what was wrong, but Marcus tucked the note away, saying nothing, his mind racing. Whitlock. Free? After the raids, the protests, the stream? He'd assumed the senator was cornered, his name in every headline. But the note's warning, paired with the sniper's crescent patch, screamed unfinished business. Marcus stroked Bravo's ears, the dog's warmth grounding him, and scanned the room, half expecting Carver's goons to burst in. The TV switched to a press conference. Whitlock himself, silver-haired and polished, denying ties to Crescent Dawn, calling the allegations a witch hunt, his smile too smooth, too practiced. Marcus's jaw clenched, the senator's voice a velvet blade, slicing through his fragile victory. Lena turned off the TV, saying they should focus on healing, on getting out of Cleveland, maybe to her friend's place in Pittsburgh. Marcus nodded, but his thoughts churned, the note a live wire. He asked Lena to check the USB in the lockbox, needing to know it was safe. She returned with it, the small drive unchanged, its data untouched. Marcus plugged it into Lena's phone, rewatching the drug footage, Reed's texts, his own stream, ensuring nothing was corrupted. The files were clean, but the note's warning gnawed, Whitlock's freedom a puzzle with missing pieces. Marcus whispered to Bravo, promising they'd end this, and planned to leave the hospital tomorrow, discharge papers or not. He'd take Lena and Bravo, head north, maybe Canada, where Crescent Dawn's reach might falter. The protests were strong, the FBI moving, but Whitlock's smile on that screen was a predator's, and Marcus wasn't naive enough to think the fight was over. That night Marcus barely slept, his arm throbbing, Bravo's soft snores his only comfort. He replayed every step, the park where Carver mocked Bravo, the arrests, the vandalism, the manhunt, the library's chaos. Each victory, the viral post, the radio hack, the stream had been clawed back by Carver's lies, Reed's cash, now Whitlock's shadow. The nurse's note felt like a grenade, its words a map to a war he hadn't won. At dawn, Lena brought coffee, her eyes heavy but determined, and said she'd rented a car ready to drive them out by noon. Marcus nodded, dressing slowly, pain spiking with each move. He pocketed the USB, Bravo's leash in hand, and signed out against the doctor's advice, the hospital's bustle a blur. Outside, the air was crisp, Cleveland's skyline sharp against a grey sky. Lena's car, a beat-up sedan, waited in the lot, and Marcus settled Bravo in the back, the dog's tail thumping despite his limp. They pulled onto the highway, Lena navigating, Marcus watching the mirrors. Every passing car a potential threat. An hour out, a news alert buzzed on Lena's phone. Whitlock's office raided, his chief of staff detained. Crescent Dawn's funding, traced to his accounts. Marcus exhaled, hope flickering, but the note's warning held him back. He told Lena to keep driving, aiming for a border town where they could lie low. The radio crackled, Aisha's voice breaking in. New evidence links Senator Whitlock to Crescent Dawn's attacks on Marcus Tate, including the Cleveland Library sniper. Marcus's pulse surged, the sniper's crescent patch now public, Whitlock's. Denials crumbling. Lena grinned, saying they'd done it, but Marcus stayed silent, the note's weight heavier than the USB. They stopped at a gas station, Bravo resting in the car, and Marcus bought water, scanning the lot for tails. A truck idled nearby, its driver's face hidden, and Marcus's gut twisted, but it pulled away, leaving dust. He climbed back in, telling Lena to hurry, the border 2 hours off. At dusk they reached a motel near Lake Erie, its sign flickering, rooms cheap and quiet. Marcus carried Bravo inside, the dog's wound needing fresh care, and Lena set up a laptop streaming news. The FBI had frozen Whitlock's assets, his allies turning, Reed and Harlan singing to save themselves. Carver's trial was set, his badge stripped, and Lena's charges were gone, her name cleared. Marcus cleaned Bravo's leg antibiotics working, and felt a moment's peace, the motel's thin walls almost cozy. He planned to cross into Canada at dawn, start over, maybe teach mechanics, let Bravo chase squirrels in peace. Lena hugged him, saying they'd made history, and Marcus nodded, the USB on the table, its job done. But as he lay down, Bravo curled. Beside him, the nurse's note flashed in his mind. Watch your back. Midnight brought a knock, soft but urgent. Marcus grabbed the knife under his pillow, Bravo growling low and peered through the peephole. A woman, the hospital nurse, stood alone, her face pale. Marcus opened the door a crack, knife hidden, and she whispered, Crescent Dawn's regrouping. Whitlock's out on bail, planning a hit. She'd overheard goons in the hospital, crescent patches on their bags, plotting to silence Marcus before he could testify. She thrust a burner phone into his hand, its screen showing a text. Whitlock's. Orders, Tate dies tonight, border motel, no witnesses. Marcus's blood ran cold. The victory a mirage. Whitlock's machine still grinding. The nurse fled, headlights flashing as a truck roared into the lot, the same from the gas station, Crescent logo on its side. Marcus woke Lena, grabbing Bravo, and they bolted out the back, the motel's fire escape creaking. Gunshots cracked, bullets chewing the wall, and Marcus dove behind a dumpster, Bravo whimpering, Lena's breath ragged. The trucksmen, 4, fanned out, radios buzzing, Whitlock's voice faint but clear. Finish it. Marcus clutched the USB, the burner, and realized the fight wasn't over. It had just begun. He led Lena and Bravo into the woods. The border. A mile off, but the men were close, their flashlights slicing the dark. He sent a final message from the burner. To Aisha, the FBI, anyone. Whitlock's hit, Crescent proof, save us. The phone died, and Marcus ran, Bravo's medal jangling, Lena's, hand in his, the truth their only shield. Whitlock was free, Crescent Dawn alive, but Marcus's war had sparked a fire, and as bullets whizzed past, he vowed to burn their empire down. For Bravo, for Lena, for every soul they'd crushed. The woods swallowed them, the hitmen's shouts fading, but Marcus knew the senator's reach was long, and this end was just a beginning, a new fight waiting across the line. Marcus Tate's grueling battle against systemic racism in Crestwood reveals raw truths about resilience and justice. His journey, sparked by a racist cop's mockery of Bravo's military medal, exposes how prejudice festers in power structures, from Officer Carver's brutality to Senator Whitlock's hidden hate network. Crescent Dawn. Marcus faced relentless racist attacks, false arrests, vandalism, a manhunt and betrayal, each blow harsher, yet his grit, honed in Afghanistan, never wavered. Bravo's loyalty, a symbol of unyielding trust, anchored Marcus through every trap, teaching that love can outlast hate's venom. The story underscores the cost of fighting racism. Marcus lost his job, home and safety, but his courage, amplified by a viral stream, sparked global protests, proving one voice can shake a corrupt system. Lena's defiance, standing by Marcus, despite her own peril, highlights family as a fortress against oppression. The nurse's note, warning of Whitlock's freedom, shows racism's stubborn roots, demanding constant vigilance. This tale urges us to confront bias head-on, to question authority, and to amplify the silenced, because silence fuels the machine. Marcus's unfinished war, with Crescent Dawn still lurking, reminds us justice is a marathon, not a sprint, and every step forward counts. Drop a comment with your take. How would you fight a racist system like Marcus did? Hit like, subscribe, and share to spread this story's fire, because truth needs warriors. Thank you for joining Marcus and Bravo's fight. May you find strength to challenge injustice daily.